I get the icon in cornflower blue?
Welcome to episode 43 of Can I Get That Software in Blue? I'm your host, Chad Tindel. Along with me, as always, my co-host. He's got a need for speed and a brain for AI bots. When it comes to tech talk, he's connecting all the dots. From engines that roar to code that learns, he's got takes that always burn. Cars and AI, he lives in that lane, fueled by passion, wired to explain. The artisan of AI, the emperor of elastic, Steve Mayzak. Everybody, welcome to the show.
Chad, that was a great one. Bringing in cars, AI, I love it.
Well, that's your two favorite things right now, right? You're always like, oh, I'm driving in my Audi. I'm driving super fast.
I love to drive fast. That's very true.
It's fun riding with you in your Audi when you drive fast because that car's so smooth. I can't tell I'm going. I don't even know how fast you're going.
We don't say that live on air.
We do. We do. Listen, if I drove that fast in my 2012 minivan with 4 kids in the back, I'd be like bouncing everywhere.
Well, I always wanted to drive on the Nürburgring. And so years ago when I was in Germany, Dimitri, one of our colleagues and friends, rented me a BMW because he knew I wanted to drive on the Nürburgring. And that's when I had a new appreciation for why German cars are built like they're built. Like, it is a different thing. So
It's so smooth. Yeah. How fast did you go in Germany? What'd you get up to?
So I had to drive from Augsburg to Stuttgart to catch a flight early in the morning. And I took that BMW up to 260 kilometers per hour, and I had it on cruise control for 45 minutes.
What is that in American?
It's like 150, 160 miles an hour.
Jesus Christ.
You learn a lot real quickly. Like, number one, don't look at your phone to change the song. Like, just use the controls on the steering wheel. And also, that car that's really far ahead, oh, there it goes.
Okay, so what kind of music were you playing going 160 miles an hour?
Techno. I have a playlist for driving fast. Like, it's all techno all the time. So
Okay. All right. Well, we've got a guest today. He's going to be talking about cars and AI and all kinds of other stuff. Let me intro him here. Today on the mic, we've got a true tech ace who's pushing computer vision into the workplace, from self-driving cars with precision and poise to apps that give mobile pros brand new toys. At Cruise, he mapped out the road ahead. Now at Primary Vector, he's blazing new threads. Jon Soini, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. That was excellent.
You got to add that to your bio for talks now.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna clip that one out. I need a walk-up song.
There you go. So Steve brought you into the show. How do you guys know each other?
Yeah, so we met through an acquaintance at Elastic. Ryan Rao. My time at T-Mobile, I used and managed a fair bit of Elastic, and Ryan and I and Hemant were kind of partners in bringing that forward.
And you have an Elastic shirt on? You want to show that to the fans?
Yeah, the B-Elk, the Belk, I guess you call it.
That's old school.
The cons in San Francisco, it was always fun to go down and just hang out and nerd out on Elastic for a few days.
Yeah. So, John, I was thinking we'll talk a little bit about your background so we give people an idea of who you are and kind of where you came from. So, where did you start? Like, were you a developer? You IT ops?
I started actually in design, websites at the time, and I was building websites in the IE6 era, and just slightly before IE6, IE4 and 5, and started with websites and kind of graphic design background. And then navigated my way into T-Mobile and started working on the phones as they were getting the WML, the WAP browsers, and working on mobile portals and selling ringtones for T-Mobile was kind of my entry into tech.
Yeah.
Can't say WAP now. That means something totally different.
It does. Yeah. Wireless Access Protocol.
That's right. That was one of my first fun projects, was building a WML site for phones back before we had smartphones.
Okay.
Right? It was like navigating the menu and figuring all that out. It was super fun. Yeah. So at T-Mobile, like, I didn't know about the ringtone thing. I know, I think it's still true that Real Networks makes a ton of their money based off ringtones.
Still?
I wonder.
Last time I talked to them, it was years ago. I had no idea they were still around. We went to see them, and that was the primary revenue source for their company, was like ringtones, hosting the ringtones, playing them back.
Such a crazy thing that we paid money for that. And I remember when I got my first iPhone, and like the iPhone 3G or whatever, and iTunes just had a function where you could make a clip and like use it as a ringtone from any MP3. And I was like, oh my God, why did I ever pay for this before? This is amazing.
exactly.
Billions of dollars of market cap in some company just going down the toilet.
So do either of you still have a custom ringtone, or are you just using the default?
I have a custom ringtone for certain people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I have different ringtones for different people.
Yeah. Mine's
not that anybody calls me anymore.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Mine's on vibrate all
nobody
the
calls
time
me.
because like it's always spam callers. So
I have my wife set so that even if I'm in like do not disturb or whatever, it'll ring through. So if she calls me an emergency, like certain family members, but nobody ever calls me. It's all text anyway. So
yeah, that's fair. So John, maybe let's talk about one of the fun projects you worked on at T-Mobile that you like want to chat about. Like you worked on a bunch of stuff, but what's the one that's kind of a good takeaway for folks to give an idea of what you were focused on?
One of the most interesting ones I worked on, I actually got to build hardware. I jumped around to different kind of parts of product. And this particular time and place was working with retail. All of the T-Mobile stores, thousands of them, and tens of thousands of retail workers. And this particular project was looking at all of the phones coming back in for warranty, support, or trade-in, right? So tons of phones coming back in the door. We had to verify kind of what was coming in the door. What kind of phone was it? What capacity, what state of operating was this phone in? The project needed to, it's hard to tell, and all of these retail workers, you can't always trust what they're going to put in the system in terms of what that phone was. Was it the right capacity? Are they giving their buddy a deal? Not to say that that's the norm, but like, you have to kind of validate what phone is coming back in the door, because at T-Mobile's scale, that was millions and millions of dollars you could lose very quickly. The business came to us in product and technology to say, like, here's what we want to do. We think we want to do it this way. We want to plug in every phone to the USB on the point of sale computer. If you've been anywhere near security, you're there's red flags. The hair on the back of your neck is standing up saying, no, we're not going to plug in foreign devices into the retail network. And so we got to work figuring out, okay, how do we verify these phones? How do we do it when maybe they don't even power on or they don't boot up properly? We kind of went through all of these different ideas and permutations of things. At the end of the day, we ended up building a little kind of IoT piece of hardware about a little, let's see, do I have it on my shelf? It's kind of right there, that little, that little box there. And it's kind of essentially a little box with a touchscreen and a Raspberry Pi like board in it. It's one of the other versions, but we built it to actually plug phones in and very quickly get the USB IDs off of the phone, because then you can trace it back to manufacturer and figure out who it is. And then you've got this kind of zero trust box, firewalled off from everything else in IT land. But it turns out I got to build that hardware, figure out how to source 20,000 of them, test it, and then give them a way to kind of bring back in their phones. But that was just part of a larger ecosystem where you plug in the phone and then you reach back to Apple and say, Apple, what phone is this? And but it was a really interesting project, kind of from end to end. Get to build hardware, see what that process is like. That whole box, this was early days of Docker, and so all of the application suite running on that little box is all Docker. So this was very early. Trying to get Docker running on a little ARM device. Docker wasn't really built for ARM in those days. And so that was kind of our application update and delivery method, was fire up the OS, run Docker, and have it do everything else from there. And so it was really, really fun project to kind of make all of those. This was 2015, I want to say at the time, to kind of bring all those technologies together.
Yeah. What tech did you use on the back end to store everything?
Let's see, we were AWS in those days, and we actually had we had a really good team that was actually building a lot of the back end for the T-Mobile app at the time. And so we had a pretty comprehensive gateways, bringing in messages into Kafka and then persisting that into DynamoDB. And
ClickHouse?
No, it wasn't ClickHouse at the time because they weren't there yet.
Was it in Amazon, like an Amazon product?
No, it was one of the open source ones, and I'm completely blanking on it. It's just left my brain. But one of the like big heavy
something.
Oh yeah,
Cassandra. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And so we had this. Thankfully, like there were a lot of teams or a lot of people working on a really robust backend where I could essentially hang my IoT infrastructure off of that and kind of do message persistence and all of that. Yeah.
Why did you feel the need to use Docker when it was really like not built for that at that time?
The big thing was we had to send these devices out to the field and have them be out there forever. We didn't ever want to see them come back, so we needed to update them kind of in perpetuity. And so it was either kind of build our own kind of flashing and over-the-air solution, which wouldn't have been that hard. So Docker was probably there was a little bit of shiny object syndrome going on with us and the other engineers, but ended up working really well. So I not too sad about that, but yeah, a little bit of shiny object, and we needed over-the-air updates.
I mean, you got to get yourself excited to work, like whatever it takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, John, I forgot to mention I'm wearing my Seahawks shirt in honor of you being in Seattle. So
perfect. Thank you.
I put this one on specifically for today. Chad did not. He's wearing blue, but that's about as far as he went to support the Seahawks. All right. So you said there was a couple, like, what's the other project you want to talk about? And we can talk about your move into the automotive industry.
Yeah. The other thing I got to do there that was super fun and really do a project or a product from start to finish was for retail. We had done a ton of work with customer care and all of this software that runs on the customer care computers. If you as a customer call T-Mobile, they have a suite of apps that they're using to help and assist you with. And we built one of those apps kind of from the ground up, from like napkin sketches to it being one of their core tools that they use to help you on a call. And that tool, we had codenamed it Grand Central. It was meant to bring in all of this data about any of the technical support you may needed. So if you called and your phone wasn't working or you're dropping calls, if it wasn't a billing question, you would use our tool to kind of, let's figure out what your problem is. And this tool was built to bring in all of the data from like everywhere in T-Mobile. Like, are you dropping calls? What phone are you using? Let's get you support for the Android device. And at the time, Android devices were terrible in terms of reliability versus some of the other devices. And so, and especially the cheap ones, which you'd give to, your kid or something, right? And so it's going to have the most problems. And we flew down to these care centers and we'd pull these reps off the line into a conference room for an hour or two, which was always tough because the folks running the call centers are like, I don't want to lose my people for 2 hours, but we promise you good things will come of this. Yeah. And we'd pull them into a room and just whiteboard, just ask them, what kinds of issues are you seeing? What are people calling about? Yeah. Of course, we had stats, but like, you actually want to talk to the real people that are going to be using your product. And we'd whiteboard with them. This was like Figma didn't exist yet. So we were using a Sketch to kind of do diagrams and kind of build out UI. And so I'm just sitting there on my computer with the screen up, designing UI as they're talking and saying, hey, if you had this, what would that do for you? And getting their feedback, both good and bad. And yeah, we went on to build that product. Piloted it. The first pilot didn't go well, right? So you take it back and you fix it and you rework it. But in the end, we gave them this product that let them kind of answer, is it the network? Is it the phone? Is it account or provisioning issues kind of causing this problem? And it even had we even tested for a while, and this is one of the more interesting, like we built in a remote support software to it. So if you had an Android phone and you called customer care for this particular time, we would actually silently install remote support on your phone, fire up a session, and then it would be ready if the agent needed it. And then they'd give you the two-way code. It would say code on your phone screen. The agent would have to type that in so they could even connect. So there's all sorts of safeguards built into the system. Yeah. But we had full remote desktop running on, and the rep could then just click around their phone just like they were sitting in front of it. And it was really interesting to watch those calls. And we thought people would be really scared about this, and no one's going to want to share their phone screen. It turns out we'd play back these calls. The people would be like, okay, cool. I'm going into my bank to do some stuff. Just work on my phone. Just fix it. I don't care.
Oh, interesting.
It turns out, most people, they love that feature. They'd love someone to go in and actually fix their problem for them. It didn't matter, that it was someone somewhere else in the world working on their phone.
It's like having a tech savvy teenager on speed dial.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like that. When you say like the first launch didn't go well, like what was your takeaway? Why didn't it go well? Was it technology choices or was it user experience?
It was the things that we had kind of chosen to focus on in the product. We had a previous product that would look very specifically at dropped calls, and we had to go, from what I remember, we had to go more deeply into the software and the phone technical support side of things, because it was, it's easier to help someone with their phone than it is to say like, okay, well, you're having dropped calls. We'll file the tickets. We'll get network engineering on it, but it's going to take them a little while to fix that.
I'm just curious, what's the real talk like inside of these cell phone companies, T-Mobile, Verizon? Like, are they feeling like existential threat because something like Starlink might end their business? Or do you think there's a future where we don't need cell phones and it's all just Wi-Fi everywhere?
No, the carriers and I was at T-Mobile. I was at T-Mobile when they had their the pre John Ledger days, and when AT&T was trying to acquire them, and it was not a morale was terrible. They were not doing, I'd say, that well. And then we had John Ledger come in. T-Mobile had gotten a windfall of, I think, a few $1 billion from the cancellation. The AT&T acquisition was canceled, and they took that money and dumped it into Spectrum. And that's the reason why none of them will ever be afraid of Starlink or Wi-Fi, is because they have so much controlled spectrum. It's just a physics game at that point. Like you won't outcompete the amount of spectrum that now the top 3 carriers have. It's just you'll have Starlink as I think as an auxiliary in a lot of cases, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more satellites in the sky. But but they have the spectrum. They're not going anywhere.
But there's so many parts of the country that still have bad service. And I mean, even in cities, I'm not talking about rural areas. I'll be driving around in suburbs of Dallas and like, it won't work, you know? So I don't know. If I had Wi-Fi everywhere, why would I need a cell phone, I guess?
Yeah. And there's Wi-Fi, but there's also, you'll see them, and they don't just deploy one type of, tower or antenna or wireless modality. You'll see them, and you've probably seen this on your phone too, where it has the UC or the UW, whatever it is. So they'll have different technologies that they'll deploy in urban centers, and different band, high frequency, mid spectrum, and low frequency bands that they'll deploy, and they work, right? The high frequency stuff is way better in the cities, but obviously it doesn't penetrate as well. The low frequency are kind of the boomer tower, boomers in a good way, the boomer towers out in the country, right? That can go for miles and miles and miles. So you'll see them push and adapt and go towards whatever 6G is. But now I'm so far out of that game, I don't know what the latest and greatest is.
I mean, I wonder about this too, because I don't know anybody who like loves their cell phone provider. And I don't know anybody who's like, oh yeah, Verizon is amazing. It's very commoditized. Like,
yeah, it is.
Some are better than others, but like.
And I wonder how it kind of differs city by city, and granted, I'm in Seattle with T-Mobile's headquarters being here, which nobody knows that's a thing, but T-Mobile's headquarters is here. So like T-Mobile's amazing here. Like my phone pulls down 900 megabits a second here, and low latency. Like if I wanted to use it as my home internet, I'm super picky, but I could if I wanted to. So it's interesting, but I know that's not the case everywhere. We're probably spoiled.
It's not great in New York. I mean, it's okay depending on where you're at. But if you're like, I go to Randall's Island, which is like an island between Manhattan and Queens, where they have a bunch of baseball fields, and my son does the league there. I get like, sometimes I can't even get 5G. It like downgrades to LTE.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes it'll say LTE, and I literally can't load like CNN.com or Google or anything. Like, it just doesn't work. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And I literally was like, I'm gonna buy a Starlink so that a mobile one, so that when I come to these games, I can just set it up.
Yeah.
Run it off a battery. Like, I shouldn't have to do this in a major city. It's not like I'm camping on the Adirondacks or something.
Mm-hmm. and you mentioned Starlink too, and the other my phone, I got the text message, oh, your phone's now connected to Starlink. So I mean that is the future. Like, you go out there, you don't need separate hardware. Your phone will just connect to Starlink or whatever satellite network of choice at some point in the future.
Wait, your phone is like Starlink ready?
Well, it doesn't have internet, but it can do text, and I think they said they're working on calls to Starlink. So I think the more modern T-Mobile phones can connect to Starlink.
I had no idea.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, like and of course it's an iPhone, so it does the other satellite messaging, which is like, it's super cool. I had a buddy, he went and climbed Denali this couple of months back, and I was just texting with him on iMessage, how's it going? And he's 17,000 feet up on a mountain. Like, how cool is that?
That's pretty cool.
That's neat.
I was on T-Mobile until, I don't know, sometime in the mid 2000s, or between 2000 2020. And my wife and I went to Mount Bachelor in Oregon, and we went on a snowmobiling trip, and we took a wrong turn, and we went around the back side of the mountain, which was a total mistake. And the belt broke on the snowmobile, and the only person that had service was my wife, and she was on Verizon. And I was like, I'm switching as soon as we go.
Yeah.
But I love T-Mobile because the international plan was amazing, right? You could travel anywhere. It worked great. Let's talk about the transition from T-Mobile into the automotive industry. So what led you to leave T-Mobile and change industries, basically? Or maybe you didn't, as much as I think.
Yeah, it was a change. In the back of my mind, I had always wanted to work on autonomous vehicles, and I watched the news reports about them, and I was like, that's a really fascinating thing. I've always wanted to work on technology that makes our lives better, makes it easier for people to do their work or their life, or helps them out in some meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go work on these self-driving cars. And I have a daughter in a wheelchair too, so like for me, it's at some point in her life, because she'll never not be in a wheelchair, like I'm hoping I can just dial up an Uber and it can, the robot Uber can take her somewhere, and I don't have to worry about who is driving it or are there enough of them, kind of thing. So a bit of the personal motivation coming in from wanting to go into them. And then I saw an opportunity to jump into Mercedes-Benz research and development. They had a Seattle cloud office. So different industry, but also working on their cloud infrastructure. So not that much of a jump in terms of what I was doing. I was building more traditional products, and I got to go work at Mercedes-Benz R&D at the start of the pandemic, right? Interviewed over Zoom. And even though they had the office in Seattle and I'm here in Seattle, did the interviews with them and jumped in over to them as the product manager leading a lot of their infrastructure tooling for their global cloud. And so they have, or at the time, I don't know what they have today, but they had 650 dev teams throughout the world that are all on Azure cloud. And multiple different instances of Azure, right? In North America, Europe, and China.
How did Mercedes-Benz end up with an engineering team in Seattle? Did they hire somebody, or?
No, they built it from the ground up, and they had Mike Dosenbach he'd come out of AWS at the time, and Mercedes had kind of tapped him to build a cloud team in Seattle, right? Take the best.
That makes sense.
Right. If you're going to do cloud, right? Yeah. Pull in engineers from Seattle, and Mercedes wanted to do this. And I think it's a brilliant strategy, right? Yeah. Pull in people from the local cloud scene, give them company cars to drive around. So that was also a perk of the job. And so they had 100 plus people working on their cloud infrastructure right here in Seattle at a office down by the waterfront. So, but I remember you were talking about driving over in Germany on the Autobahn. That was one of the things I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go over there every quarter, just grab an S-Class or an AMG out of the test garage and just go drive and, use dog food the product. And because it was the pandemic, I never got to do that. So very, very sad about that.
So what was the product you were building?
Yeah, the product that we were in charge of was tooling for building out environments for any dev team. So the developers could pull down a repo and run scripts to kind of spin up a pristine environment for their product. And as a part of that, it was actually at the time they got their own Kubernetes cluster. And then we did all of the ingress and networking into the larger network within. It was a global network in Azure. So it was a very, very complicated network that I only ever understood it in parts because I'm not a big networking guy. But the idea was to give all of the developers worldwide the same tooling, the same platform. We could upgrade their infrastructure or they could upgrade it themselves, but to give them basically this environment set up for them to build their service, their product, their front end, whatever it is. And so we had tooling to do that, and then a web UI as well, where if they didn't want to use the CLI, they could go in and click a button and say, give me an environment with these different options. So support for the larger developer community within Mercedes.
Are there any services in Mercedes cars that are cloud connected?
There are lots of them. Yeah.
What in the car is like talking to the cloud?
Yeah. One good example that probably won't think of is the radio app itself. So if you pull up the radio app and you scroll through your different stations, all of the metadata imagery for those stations comes down, which is, not a technically challenging thing, but it's something you don't think about, is that Mercedes is giving you all of the rich station metadata. There's Docker within the cars themselves. I think there's Docker running. So a lot of those apps are running in containers within the car. So you have to vend all of those to the car. You have to make sure that it's incredibly secure because you have application code running, not on the same network, but it's a few steps away from the CAN bus and the car's real network. And so lots of security and hardening that has to go on to run a lot of the application services that are anything running in the head unit or doing telemetry for the car would have been coming from the cloud. And then of course, they're always sending data backup, remote services to lock your car. If you don't pay for it, right? Things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of data coming in and out of those cars, and of course all the services to support it. So it's quite the thing.
So, John, you went from Mercedes to Cruise. For those that don't know, Cruise is the self-driving company.
What is it, the product that they actually make, Cruise? I mean, I know they got acquired by GM later, but what is it?
It was self-driving, full-on robo-taxi service.
Okay, so it was like a Waymo competitor. Like you were building the car, you had an app, people could dispatch it, or that was the goal?
Exactly.
A full-on Waymo competitor.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, a full-on robo-taxi service, and I joined them as it was just starting to be available in the earliest days to the public. But the cars themselves were completely driverless. So you could go down to San Francisco, cars whizzing by, just like the Waymos are now, like still out of science fiction, right? This empty car just drove down the street. There's nobody in that car. And then I got to go work on, and what I did is I was the product person in charge of a remote assistance platform. So when these cars get stuck, they call into folks down in Phoenix. There's a number of remote advisors in Phoenix, both for Waymo and Cruise. And so they jump back and forth between the companies. And they're the ones that are kind of tasked with getting that car unstuck by kind of giving it suggestions, maybe drawing a better path on the map, or if it's a more exceptional situation, pulling in, law enforcement or other operational support. So a big service that's all low latency video, lots of commands going down to this, 2-ton robot with a person inside of it, and maybe a crazy person in San Francisco, doing weird things to the car. Really fascinating problem.
Trying to light it on fire, for example.
Yeah.
What did they plan for? Like, how many cars could a remote agent monitor and then intervene in? What was the ratio?
Let's see. The ratio, it was multiple cars to one person.
Sure. I've heard Waymo was like 8-1 or something like that.
They're probably, yeah. And Cruise, I don't think was near that. And the interesting thing was we focused on, there's kind of two metrics we focused on, which was miles per remote assistance. So how many miles could a car go before it needed to ask for some sort of assistance? And so we had a metric that we watched, and I was kind of in charge of that metric and reporting it every week to leadership. Here's how we're doing. Here's the problems we're tackling to solve this miles per RA. And you wanted to get that up to dozens or more miles per RA. And those could be little things. Like it could be calling in to say I saw siren, or I saw lights, and I might have heard some sirens off here. Should I pull over? I'm not quite sure. So it could be just a simple yes or no question, or it could be much more involved, like there's fire trucks and hoses on the ground in front of me. What do I do? And I've got a firefighter slapping my hood, saying get out of the way. And, it could be much more interesting scenes like that, where we actually had to build a lot of technology to have them respond to exceptional times like that, where it turns out if you want to stop an AV, slap the hood, because then it'll be like, oh, I've detected a slight collision. So if you want an AV to get out of the way, you shouldn't, as a firefighter, you shouldn't slap the hood. But they don't know that. Nobody knows this, right? It's a weird thing. So anyway, supporting all the cars that were out in the field. And we wanted to get them to going many, many miles without needing assistance. And then if they did need assistance, we wanted to obviously shrink the time to get them moving down to, mere seconds and not 30 seconds, 60 seconds longer. So, yeah.
I mean, I feel like the 80-20 rule applies here, but it feels like it might be inverted, where the 20% is the easiest part and the 80% is dealing with the long tail of exceptions that can happen when you're driving.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. You tend to there can be simulation testing. You can get these cars out there and they'll handle a lot of the kind of normal, typical situations. And then it's we've got hoses draped across the ground, and those are really hard to see, both from LiDAR cameras, right, if it's dark, and the radar just isn't. Radar can't see them. It's not meant for small things like that. And so you end up dealing with all these weird one-off situations, and you have to kind of take those back and say, okay, great. Now the car got stuck because of steam coming up in the vent, and it thought that was an actual object, right?
Obstacle,
and video thought that was an object, but LiDAR could see through it.
Yeah.
And so Cruise was LiDAR based.
It was everything based. Yeah. So cameras, LiDAR, infrared, radar. Cruise was developing their own sensor that was kind of a fusion of LiDAR and infrared camera. That's like the Kinect sensor in the Xboxes a while back, right? That could kind of see how you danced.
Yeah.
It turns out that's really good for detecting kind of small animals and things that are close to the car. radar, ultrasonics, and audio, everything. So it was kind of a fusion of like 6 different sensor modalities.
What's your opinion on the LiDAR debate?
Elon, it won't be camera only. I could say that in a lot less nicer ways, but cameras will not solve the self-driving problem. You have to have more sensor modalities to have a robotaxi service at scale. You know, it's probably a hill I'd die on, having seen what I've seen, because I was watching all of the ways a car would get stuck or nearly stuck or have a safety incident. And then I went to work on the sensor team after that. So I got to see how the sensors were developed and the roadmap for the sensors and what they all did and what the data looked like coming back from them and why they were developing certain sensors. So I'm very much, video is not going to solve that problem at scale.
John, it seems like these things work great when it's sunny and the lines are clearly painted on the roads. But how do they handle degradation in infrastructure and also like weather events? So, you know, there's been a lot of floods lately. Like, how do they handle that when the road gets swamped with water? And then how do they handle the snow?
Those were the things that they were really working on in earnest when I left them. But the short answer is it's really hard, not well to start out. And then you have to like snow, fog. If you can't see visually, then you have to fall back to LiDAR, radar. And then you lose a lot of your ability to recognize, is that a car or is that a fire truck or not, right? Or is that a bus? If you can't, if it's just a big blocky thing on LiDAR. So lots of, and then of course you deal with water and standing water. And there's, I don't know, a month or two back, there was a recording of a Waymo just plowing into what was a lake in the street, right? And then it started floating. Really hard problem to solve when it's like this extreme edge case. And now, okay, great, you have to do that, or you have to actually program it not to fall into a giant hole in the ground, right? Maybe construction had dug something up and someone moved a cone, and they, at the time, that was actually a serious thing we were working on, was don't drive into a giant hole in the ground. So
it makes sense.
How much did a Cruise car cost?
That I can't say, but they were working on getting the cost down, but they're a fair bit. Yeah.
I mean, the Waymos are like $250K or something like that.
I don't
they're
think
high.
I don't think they're that much. I suspect the Waymos are a lot cheaper. I would guess the Waymos are $150K max, and I'm sure the newer models are probably sub 100, I'd guess.
$200K. Waymo's hardware technology package estimated to cost $200K. So somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that's like so much more than a Tesla, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a lot, but it's got so many more sensors on it.
Yeah. I do wonder if one day we get to the point where we just start buying autonomous vehicles, or if it completely goes into the subscription on demand model where like nobody owns a car really. And then when you need one, you just dial one up. Like, I don't know how that's going to work in the future.
Yeah. Like you just Uber everywhere or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John, what's your opinion on that? Like right now we're in this weird starting off place where most people don't have self-driving cars. A few people have self-driving cars. The self-driving cars, they don't really talk to each other. They don't share information. But there's this utopian vision of if all the cars were self-driving, then it would be a fully connected mesh and they could all coordinate with each other and traffic jams would end because everybody could just go at the same speed at the same exact time or whatever. You didn't have stop and go. Is that possible? Like, do you actually think that's ever going to happen, or like, what's it going to take?
And I would have had a different answer prior to working at Cruise, and I think it was much more idealistic of, we can, everyone will give up their cars and we'll have this perfect, driving system where they're all like on the highway doing 100 miles an hour, 6 inches from each other in little, virtual car trains. And in the city, we don't need lights anymore because they just, negotiate everything. And then after working at Cruise and kind of the big realization, or not, just like seeing how technology meets humans, and we as people have strong preferences. We want to drive fast cars, right? I was driving an AMG as a company car at Mercedes, and when I make my money, I'm gonna go buy that car back. Like, I want to drive that car. And then I think there's a lot of things. The other thing I learned is there's a lot of things you have to do in a car that will go into a robo-taxi service at scale that you don't ever have to do in a consumer car. Like, all of the doors have to be able to be closed remotely. And that's probably not true of most of our cars, right? All of the windows need pinch sensors and maybe even better sensors to know that someone's not sticking their arm through, because if it's a robotaxi, no one's there to make sure it's not hurting somebody. And so it's that like technology meets the people aspect of things. We're dumb, messy humans that do stupid things when we're drunk, or like this would happen at cruise a lot, which is the kind of the clown car effect, where if you don't have an Uber or a Lyft driver in your car, you as the teenager or anyone, you're going to call up a car and you're going to try and stuff 8 of your friends in that car.
Yeah.
And great, now we have to put sensors and ways to detect that there's 8 people in that car that should only have 4, right? So
I never thought of that. That's a great point.
Yeah. Or they fall asleep or they're drunk and they pass out. And so like you have to do so many things to deal with the messy problem. But it turns out that's not that much of an edge case. So if you're going to run a profitable robo-taxi service at scale, like you kind of have to have all those things, I feel. So I don't think we'll ever get to that, like they're all self-driving cars. I think we'll keep pushing forward, but people like to drive. We like our cars, or we need them to get places that, a service is not going to take me out to Eastern Washington or something. Yeah. So,
well, I thought Subaru solved this with their trunk monkey concept. Do you guys remember those commercials? Maybe it was a Northwest thing.
No.
So years ago, Subaru ran an ad campaign where whenever anything was wrong, a monkey would pop out of the trunk and solve the problem. These were hilarious commercials. I highly suggest you Google them; they will make you laugh.
Yeah,
but I hadn't thought about all these little edge cases. This is probably it is the 20/80 rule here. It sounds like.
How do these taxi services deal, like when a human literally makes a mess in the car and someone throws up, or a kid throws up, like what happens? They pull themselves out of service and drive themselves to a detailer? Like what do they do?
And so like in Cruise's case, I'm guessing it's the same for Waymo, but these cars, they'd go out, they'd leave the depot, right? So there'd be depots scattered all over the city perhaps, and they'd do their shift, and then something would happen. Someone would there would be a biological incident in the back of one of the cars. We were even, when I was working on the sensor team, we were trying to concept, like, could we come up with air quality sensors that can detect this inside the car? Because what would happen at the time is the next rider would look at it and be like, oh, gross. And they'd, talk to customer support and be like, your car's a gross mess. Like, what the heck? And then, essentially we'd pull the car out of rotation. There was a system for tasking, is the car in operational mode? Is it picking up rides, or should it come back to the depot? And then someone in ops would just like click a button on their screen and the car would drive itself back to the depot. And they type in and the ticket needs bio. But they just drive themselves back to the depot, get cleaned, charged, and then go out again.
Do you think that it'll turn into like these things will be super utilitarian? It'll be like hard plastic benches like the New York City subway, so that they can just spray out and then go?
I think they were doing things to opt to do that. When I left Cruise, they were working on the bus-like car that you might have seen pictures of. It looked like a minivan, but it could go either direction. And I think Zoox is working on one like that too, where it's like a people mover. There's no steering wheel. There's no side view mirrors because you don't need them. And it does have the harder seats, right, that can be more easily wiped down. And they've kind of figured out it doesn't have windows that roll down or up anymore because that's a liability. So they're working on things like that. Yeah.
Inside the company, how do you guys talk about the ethical problems of things like, it's my car, so is the car, let's say I own a self-driving car. I mean, Cruise is a taxi service, but let's say I own a self-driving car, or I rent a self-driving car. I'm in a ride in a Cruise. I've paid for it. It's mine for that period of time. I want that car to make decisions that save my life. Right? But it might be faced with the decision of like, it can save the passenger or it can save a pedestrian. I don't know, like some ethical dilemma. Like
the trolley problem.
Yeah, but the trolley problem is for the passenger, not like I'm going to kill one person over there or 5 people over there. It's like the passenger is the other person that it's considering. Yeah. So is it obligated to consider the person who owns the car or rented the car, or how do you think about that problem?
Yeah. And that was an interesting one too. When I got in there and we started, I got to work very closely with the team of safety engineers at Cruise. And this was something, I had no concept of this going in as a system. What is a systems and safety engineer? And then they became like my, close cohorts I worked with day in and day out to develop our solutions for the cars, because we were giving remote assistance to these 2-ton robots, so they had to do everything safely with regard of everyone. And kind of the short answer is like the trolley problem never came up because It was just, you never had that as a part of the variable in your equation. It was, what is the safest thing for the car to do, like full stop? And so,
But as measured by what function?
as measured by, I guess, just safety in general, right? And that could include, well, and that, I guess we would have vulnerable, oh, what was the term for it? The vulnerable users, right? And we would think of them as like anyone on the sidewalk, pedestrian, person on a bicycle. Those are the most vulnerable people in these situations, right? Because you're in a 2-ton aluminum and steel cage, and they're not. And so high regard for those folks, right? And especially if they're small, like little kids that are really hard to detect on the side of a car. That's one of the reasons Cruise was developing those specific LiDAR infrared cameras, was because they're really good at detecting a person who's 2 feet tall next to the car. And so high regard for vulnerable road users. And then you looked at doing and having the car do the safest thing in the immediacy of like, okay, let's protect those users. And then let's get the car to minimal risk condition. And so and that may be getting it off to the side of the road, out of the way. It may be having it drive for a while in a degraded state. And so there's all these different conversations about like, what is the best thing to do? And then in every situation, like you have to account for, are you on a highway? Are you on a 20-mile-an-hour road? Are there train tracks ahead of you? And you'd work out every situation with your like your systems and safety colleagues to say like, what does my remote assistance feature do in each one of these things? But I hope that answered the question, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I just wonder if like some standards body is going to just come and say like, this is what cars should do in these potential situations, so that car manufacturers aren't having to really make these ethical decisions themselves. And there's no like, well, you can't sue the car manufacturer because it made a decision you didn't like. Like, we're just following the ethical demands of the standards body. I assume that kind of thing is coming. I have one more question about cars. I know Steve has to end at 1:30. I'm assuming GM isn't getting into the taxi market. Did they buy Cruise to jumpstart their own self-driving in their own cars? Is that kind of how it's going?
No, well, unfortunately it's going poorly for for GM and Cruise. Cruise is effectively no more. They bought them to, I think, to get into the taxi. That was always the vision at Cruise, was the next Uber. Right, we're gonna have, and just like Waymo, right, we're gonna have so many of these out there. We're gonna be the next Uber, and that was the vision for the entirety of the time I was there. And then Cruise had an incident. There were multiple parties involved, but it was at the end of the day an incident with a pedestrian, and that began kind of Cruise's downfall. And that was when I got to exit along with a quarter of the company. But the vision initially was global robotaxi. Millions of robot cars driving everyone around. And now it's kind of I need to go talk to some of my previous colleagues, but I imagine they're just looking at what pieces are they going to incorporate into their consumer cars, or maybe they'll sell the tech. I don't know. It's been an interesting thing to watch, the kind of the winding down of Cruise.
Did GM buy them after that incident?
Well, before. GM bought them in 2016, I want to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't realize it had been that long ago.
Yeah, quite a ways. They just poured tons of money into it with the expectation that it would be a global scale business.
The GM was trying to get into the taxi market.
Very much so.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. There was a while where Cruise had more cars on the road than Waymo. Like there were hundreds of Cruise cars on the road. So it was a legit.
I imagine, just as maybe a transition from self-driving, which we could talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
Very deep topic, into your current startup. My suspicion is that cars will go the way of horses for people driving, and eventually we'll have car ranches where if you want to drive a car, you got to go to the ranch, rent a car, drive it on a track, and you get your experience, and you'll have to pay extra to drive a stick shift. That's what I'm thinking, right? Like, if full self-driving ever becomes the norm, then just like horses, like there'll be a ranch. You might even see some wild cars running that went rogue and they're just out in the desert on solar forever.
Driving a stick shift will be like listening to vinyl. It'll be like only hipsters who are into the old stuff. It was so much better before, Remember, you have your record player next to your stick shift right there.
Dude, Betamax, or not Beta, but what was it? The 8-track tapes.
Yeah,
in the old cars. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So funny. All right, so John, this great background. You've done a lot in your career, worked for some really cool companies. Then you decided to start your own. What made you decide to start your own? It's a huge risk, a lot of work, but potentially high reward.
I wanted to start my own company. Getting laid off from cruise was kind of one of the like, okay, I've got time to rest and relax. I've got severance to ride on for a little bit and then figure out what I want to do. And then it was like the confluence of all this Gen AI tech coming online where I started looking at the problem of I've got this wonderful camera in my pocket and on this phone, and I still can't like snap a picture of something and like have it automatically land on my calendar, my task list. And so I started working on some prototypes with the vision models were just coming online when I started this. And I took my son's cross-country schedule that had it's a monthly calendar, and it had all the practices and meets on this monthly calendar. And I built a prototype. I want to say it was Gemini's image model, but I built a prototype and a little workflow to like take a picture of that and parse out every single one of those into structured data and then landed on my calendar. And it worked. And I was like, oh, there's something here. And grabbed a buddy of mine who's really smart and I've worked with over the years. And I had coffee with him and I showed him this. And I was like, let's do something about this. Let's build a company around kind of bringing the real world into like the messy real world, the pictures, the videos, the audio recordings. Let's do something with that. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. And we've kind of gone through a few iterations of that. But long story short, that was kind of what began the journey of like, oh, let's make sense of our world and do something with it.
So you started with that concept of like multimodal by default, right? Like when you first started, like what was the thinking as far as how long you would take to prototype something, build it out, get to the point where you could actually start making money on it? Like what was that thought process and journey like initially?
Of course, we thought we could do it faster than we have, right? The prototypes are easy. And that's something else, I think, in this world of AI. It's real easy to build a prototype. And then we began the hard work of like, okay, let's figure out the product and now make this work with almost anything we throw at it and deal with all the other things you deal with software, reliability, and in our case, the quotas with the different foundational models. So we wanted to get something up and running sooner. Our thought was to build a consumer app in about 6 months and get it out there. We have a beta of that running. It runs. I have it on my phone. I've got 30 or 40 users that have been using it for a little while, but we kind of made the call early. Consumer wasn't the thing. Everyone's pulling back on what they're spending. They're canceling subscriptions. That's not a battle I want to fight. And so we began going after different kind of, okay, what can we do in business, small business, medium-sized business? Where can we bring this kind of system and platform into play? And it took us about a year. We have one customer using, we built a business product, the first version of the business product. And we have one customer that we signed last December. And they're using it to do capture and pull in information from kind of retail surveys. They go into stores and take surveys of things. But it took a little while to kind of build up the platform and kind of get that first customer.
Your company's called Primary Vector.
Yes.
Two questions. So how did you come up with that name? What is that? And I know you might change it, rebrand it to more match the product that you built. But I'm just curious about the history there. And then also, I couldn't find any history of funding in Crunchbase or anywhere else. So did you take any funding or is it all bootstrap? Like what's the background there?
Yeah. So the name was just kind of a mix of, well, I need a .com and I want something kind of cool and in this space and it's all vector math and there's a little bit of Star Trek nerdery prime directive things in there. Okay. And hence Primary Vector. It's a little bit of a mouthful.
When Steve told me we were going to do this, at first I thought it was another vector database. Obviously we deal in that world a lot.
Yeah.
And we had Kevin on earlier talking about Vectroid and that vector database. So I thought it was something in that space. Obviously it's not, but
and then the funding piece, and then I'll jump back to the name piece. So we are in kind of friends and family angel funding. So we've taken we're at about 150K there, but also kind of I guess half bootstrapped. Myself and my co-founder we're pouring into the business as well, and we can do that for a while. It's building a software startup these days is not like incredibly expensive. It's in our case mostly salaries that we want to be able to survive on.
Are you trying to get it to a point where you can take on more investors?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Like what kind of metrics are investors looking at today before they give a seed round or a pre-A or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
yeah, yeah. The big things we've seen, yes, we're going after more funding. We're going to kind of finish out the friends and family angel round, and then we're starting to talk to kind of those pre-seed VCs, and so I'm having calls with them probably on about a weekly basis just to like intro the company. Let's start the relationship, and kind of what I'm hearing from them is they want to see enough traction in terms of like, okay, if we're a B2B startup, that's 5+ customers that have signed 5-figure contracts, give or take, right? They want to see enough traction where you're starting to kind of prove out you have product market fit beyond kind of the 1 or 2 companies that you may know. So dollars coming in, right? Contracts being signed. And then they want to see what does the market look like? What is your addressable market, right? What problem are you going after? Who's in that market? Are you going up against a ton of well-established players that are going to eat you for breakfast? Or are you kind of blue ocean doing something new? And I feel like we're kind of in the middle. Some of the things we're doing are interesting and very different from what some of the established folks do, and we do it in different ways. But also at the end of the day, if you're doing visual capture and making sense of that data for a field worker or a frontline worker, you have to integrate really well into existing workflow processes, and companies are very reluctant to change those processes. And I've been there, like getting a frontline worker to do something different. There's a lot that goes into it.
So your product is called ProofSight.
Yes.
Who is give me an example of like you're the best user that you could possibly hope for. Like, what's your ideal customer? What are they using it for?
Our ideal customer is someone who has workers out in the field they've got a particular job to do. Let's pick pest control. They have people that go out and do walkthroughs of your house, right? Maybe you've gotten the guy that's knocked on your door, and that's probably annoying, but they go out, they take pictures of your house beforehand. Here's all the problems we see. You shouldn't have that thing going on. Rats are going to get in there. And they do their job. A month later, weeks later, ongoing, they've done their job, and they have to write up what they did. They have to document it. They have to show that to you. They have to show that to their leadership. And right now they're going in and they're writing down a lot of things. They're using a service management app and they're typing a lot of things. In our world, they go out, they snap a few photos, they talk while they're doing it, and they get back to their desk, and we've written a report from them and said, great, we were at this place. We did all these things. Here's the photos. Here's the work we did. Here's the products you used in that work. And when they get back to their desk, it's written for them. They just have to maybe review it, tweak a couple things, and send it further up the chain. So anyone who has work like that to do, security guards that are doing rounds is another good one. Today are scanning QR codes or typing things into their app. We can make that visual and like take the best parts of a consumer capture, camera, voice recorder, and turn that into, okay, here's the rounds they did. Here's the sketchy things that we spotted that they may not have thought of, right? And so a lot of that kind of messy work that happens in the field, we want to turn into like automate the anomaly detection, automate the reporting.
What design partners did you work with kind of early on, or are you working with?
Yeah, we've got a couple, and we're looking for more. We've got one in the kind of that retail merchandising space where we've been kind of beating on the system in terms of reliability with them a lot. They'll go in and take 1,000 photos in an hour. So to build a mobile app and system that will handle 1,000 photos from just one worker in an hour. This is, I should say, so one.
What are they taking 1,000 photos of exactly?
They're going into and looking in retail stores about how things are merchandised and what they're priced at. Like, so what is that? Where is that thing in the store? Is it on an end cap? Right? Is it on sale this week? How many do they have sitting on their shelf? It's kind of low key, you're surveying a competitor or products in a store, basically. Yeah. And you have to kind of do it quickly because they don't like you wandering through the store taking all sorts of photos. And then one of the other ones we're working with is a private a security firm that does executive protection and guard services. And so high-end security for VIPs. And they have to go out and they have to kind of survey and see, where is this person going to travel? Where are they going to stay? Where are they going to eat their dinner? And look for all of the, where are we dropping them off? What things are near? Are there nearby hospitals? So a lot of kind of that, like, take in information visually, but also where are they? So we're recording location, and then we're doing things like that. Like, what are the points of interest around? Like, where's the closest hospital or level 1 trauma hospital? all those types of things. So, and then writing that report for them. So that's more like, that's less quantity of information and more like quality of information. We don't want to miss anything. And then we kind of write the report for them.
Yeah. John, is there any applicability in the law enforcement space, like with body cams and things like that? I would imagine there is.
That is something we're actually,
Oh, okay.
I don't want to say pivoting, but we're focusing down into security and law enforcement. And
Right.
100%, there's a ton of things we can do in law enforcement. And we're not going to focus big on our video piece yet, but having secure capture for a law enforcement person out in the field is, and then kind of enhancing that in a way that will stand up into court, or
Yeah.
not enhancing, but pulling information out of that recording, that image, that voice recording, in a way that will stand up in court is, I'll say, not an easy problem.
Yeah.
But that's one that we're going into, which is like how do we kill hallucinations, right? How do we make sure it never happens? And we've got a whole litany of strategies that we're working on to do that. But we see law enforcement as one of our bigger kind of oceans to jump into. But there's some established players in there. We know it's not going to be easy.
John, how are you thinking about models from cloud providers versus self-hosting? Because, it doesn't seem like a month goes by without some model online spitting out gibberish for 20 minutes or an hour or all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which will add a risk to your business. And more businesses that rely on these things on a daily basis, when those things happen, they're going to have massive impacts.
Yeah.
So are you thinking about like how much you leverage public ones versus taking an open source model and self-hosting?
We are. That's been from our inception, that's been a huge topic. And so in our earliest days, we built, and in our case, we built our system to use any and every model within a task. And that includes like fallback if one is out for that given task. So if we push an image up through our system and say, tell me all the retail price tags in this image, for example, we start with our preferred models that we know work best for those solutions. And then if it's down at that point or not responding, we can fall back to others. And then we track, okay, which model did we use, right? We track exceptions. Okay, that thing that failed its first pass. So we've been building in, I guess, almost from a reliability standpoint, we wanted to make sure we're not going to be tied into any one model because they all have their outages. So that's one way we're kind of thinking about it, but also like they're black boxes, right? We don't know what will change under the hood from any given moment. And so I do think there's still a very big place for the open source models where it's that software, point in time, it hasn't changed. We know that we control at least the deployment of that model. And so there's going to be a place and a time where I think as we get more down or more into these use cases that are maybe safety related or there are huge financial implications, I think we're going to start to see places, and maybe it's, Llama or others where they say like, yes, that model has never changed. Therefore, the response may change, right? That's part of the fun in some of this non-deterministic stuff, but at least your black box hasn't changed.
All right. Well, hey, we got to wrap it up. We're out of time, but John, thank you for taking the time to meet with us.
Yeah, thank you.
There's probably a lot more we can talk about around the company you're building. And so maybe as you guys progress, we'd love to have a follow-up conversation on how that's going eventually. But thank you for joining.
Yeah, John, we always love talking with the founders, and good luck with ProofSight. Sounds like an interesting idea. I hope you get to the point where you can raise funding and kind of scale it to the next level. I think you'll be successful. It's a cool idea, and it's a hot space. So good luck with all of that. Thanks for coming on, and it's been a great show.
Yeah, thank you guys both. This was a lot of fun, and I'll see you again in a year or so. Let's do it again.
We would love that. We would love that. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and share this episode out on LinkedIn. Help us get the word out. Help John get the word out about ProofSight, and everybody go check it out. Thanks. Have a nice day.
See you, everybody.